Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going on what I think is a pretty profound journey of self-discovery. We're going to take a really close look at a deeply personal topic for a lot of us out there, the precocious child trope. My goal here is to guide us through this fascinating source material so we can unpack the hidden, psychological layers of what it really means to grow up too fast. All right, let's dive right in. So think back for a second. Do you remember the first time someone called you mature for your age? Maybe you got praised for being an old soul, or you were always known as the easy one. The kid who never caused any trouble, always submitted every assignment exactly on time. I want you to take just a second to reflect on that early praise and how it actually shaped the way you saw yourself. And that brings us to section 1, the illusion, the compliment. To the outside world, that quiet, steady wisdom, well, it looked like a remarkable gift. Adults saw it as a sign of early intelligence, or just a highly disciplined, easygoing character. It really seemed like a compliment, right? A purely positive trait to be celebrated. But our source material actually reframes that exact experience under a clinical term, survival intelligence. In psychology, this isn't just seen as a cute personality quirk. It's an adaptation. It's literally a strategy developed by a child in response to emotionally unavailable or unpredictable caregivers, where they're forced to prioritize threat management over the pure freedom of play. Giving this a validating clinical name really highlights the hidden reality behind all that childhood maturity. Moving right along to section 2, the reality, the adaptation. We need to gently shift our perspective away from that romanticized illusion for a minute. On the outside, sure, the world saw a gift, early intelligence, a perfectly disciplined character, but beneath that maturity, there was a silent architecture being built. You weren't just naturally calm, you were actively tracking microexpressions, reading subtle tone changes, and managing other people's reactions just to stay safe in your environment. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding why you had to build that architecture in the first place. Your childhood was likely defined by this incredibly heavy weight of observation. Maybe you faced unpredictable parents, a sibling in crisis, or lived in a home where silence was literally the only form of safety available to you. In those environments, you learned to read the room way before you ever opened your mouth to speak. You stayed small to avoid shifting any invisible tension towards yourself. Ultimately, you didn't learn how to express your own needs. Instead, you learned how to manage everyone else's. You didn't grow up fast because you were gifted. You grew up fast because you were alone. Wow. Let that sink in. That is a stark, heavy realization. Your early maturity was not some kind of developmental achievement. It was a lonely necessity for survival, born completely from the realization that no one was coming to handle the world for you. Which naturally brings us to section 3, the adulthood paradox, the exhaustion. You see, this deeply ingrained childhood blueprint doesn't just magically vanish when you grow up. It actually follows the old soul right into their adult life, shaping the very foundation of how they interact with the world and the people around them. Often, it manifests as what our source calls the adult fixer. You become that hyper-responsible person in your friend group or your family. You're the one everyone calls at 2 a.m. because, well, you always have the answers. And to the outside observer, you seemingly never fall apart. You might even find yourself replaying conversations in your head constantly, just to make absolutely sure you didn't accidentally inconvenience anyone. But this creates a really painful paradox. On one hand, you have this amazing ability to navigate others' chaos. You're incredibly capable and often highly successful on the surface. But on the other hand, when it comes to navigating your own chaos, you feel completely lost internally. Because you were praised for not needing anything as a kid, you grew up genuinely believing that having your own needs actually makes you a burden to others. You became a function instead of a person. Let that heavy truth just breathe for a moment. It perfectly captures that profound, bone-deep internal exhaustion that comes from performing the relentless emotional labor of holding the world together, all while completely ignoring your own humanity. This brings us to section 4, the turning point, the realization. Now, in any true journey of self-discovery, there comes a pivotal and honestly, often pretty uncomfortable moment of confrontation. Surviving and living are not the same thing. The hard truth that so many old souls eventually have to face is that the act of merely managing threats and mitigating tension is completely separate from the act of truly experiencing life. And the cost of performing adulthood, it's steep.
That highly praised maturity was actually a profound form of self-abandonment. You were literally experiencing grief before you even had the vocabulary to describe it. It also creates this persistent physical tension, even when things around you are perfectly calm. Your body remains tense and hypervigilant today because your nervous system just hasn't realized yet that you aren't in that house anymore, and you are no longer responsible for everyone's peace. Your mind is basically just sitting there, still waiting for the next problem to fix.
Let's look at section 5, the journey forward, the healing.
Okay, we're pivoting now toward a much more hopeful, reconstructive phase. The path out of this paradox is a deeply personal journey of self-discovery and conscious unlearning, which really requires a few initial cognitive shifts. First off, step 1, you have to stop asking, why am I like this? Step 2, start asking, what can I become now that I understand it? And step 3, which is absolutely crucial, disconnect your worth from your usefulness. Your intrinsic value as a human being is not tied to how low maintenance you can be for other people. Hear this with absolute warmth. You are allowed to be imperfectly human. You really are. You're allowed to be messy. You are allowed to be truly seen. And you are allowed to be completely imperfect without the world falling apart around you. Reclaiming your life is a gentle, incredibly slow process. It means finally prioritizing your own comfort over someone else's expectations. It's about taking the time to teach your nervous system that it is actually safe to exhale now. You have to stop feeling like you constantly need to earn your place in the room by being the strongest person in it. And above all else, you must remember that your mere presence is not a burden. As we bring this explainer to a close, I really want to leave you lingering on this profound question of hope and self-discovery. What can you become now that you understand it? I invite you to just reflect on what your future might look like when you are finally unburdened from the heavy weight of having to hold absolutely everything together. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. Keep exploring and please take care of yourself.